Welcome to Chew the Fat. In this series, I sit down with high-performance guests and we talk about life, business, and what it takes to be at the top. This is part of my mission to raise $1 million for charity by writing a cookbook called Eat with Purpose. But I'm going to need your help. If you can share the content and leave a review, it's going to make a massive impact. And the bigger the audience, the greater the reach, and the sooner we can get to that $1 million goal. Enjoy the episode. Yosef Martin, founder of BoxyCharm, welcome to Chew the Fat.
Thank you for having me.
So in every high performer that I've spoken to, there's always something contextual in their childhood that's made them the person they are. What's yours?
So I don't know if you know, but I used to sell a subscription box, beauty box, and all my childhood I wanted to sell subscription boxes. I'm just kidding. That was not. I mean, I think you're right. There's some traumas that had to build you, where you don't think. I mean, if you look at my childhood, I had divorced parents. They got divorced when I was 8 months old. The area where I lived was a very conflict area. I remember being in a shelter at the first part of my life until the age of 8, where I lived in the northern part of Israel, and it was consistently being bombarded from the north of Lebanon. So you sleep in shelters, and you kind of like your childhood is playing with shells of bombs and so on that surround you. And then my mom decided it's not the right place to raise your child. Let's go to the central part of the country where the missiles don't reach. Then over there, I had a different childhood. Honestly, very beautiful childhood. That's what I remember. But being with divorced parents, I had to once in a while go visit my dad when he was still part of my life. And you know what? I guess the environment where you live in shape you, right? I lived in a town that was a bit rough. So I can't tell you how many times I was in fights when I was a kid. It was just a rough town. But at the same time, it's very demanding, meaning if you want to be the cool one in high school, it's really, at least where I came from, it's really not about how much money your family have or so on. It's how well you speak and then what are the grades you have. I mean, at that time, girls would look at you different if you get the right grades, 9th grade, 8th grade. So even though you're going to fights, you still have to get straight A's and you have to be getting the AP classes in math and so on, which is a paradox a bit if you come back to America and you look at how everything is over here. But meaning you have to struggle physically and also intellectually. And you really trigger your brain. You have to be somewhat of an intellect to be able to be where you want to be and so on. It was just a childhood. I'm kind of glad that it was a bit innocent where they did not look at your finance record and they didn't care what shoes you wear because I didn't have anything fancy to wear. And you know, my mom was a hairdresser and later on moving over here, she was a living au pair. But as long as they look at the substance of who you are and your character, then it was a lot easier. And that's why my circle of friends was just people that could come from all sorts of life, with money, without money. That was never the question. It's more about your class. How do you behave? Let me hear you. And that's what makes you go in the right path, even though it's a challenging area.
That's really interesting. And what was the key values that your mum instilled in you?
Honesty. That's one thing you can never bring back. If you're the one that's going to make it, take it away from yourself. No one can take it from you. It's one thing that if you're a dishonest person, if I have merged with you one time and I did you wrong, it's me doing it for me, not you doing it for me, and I can never, ever get it back from you again. So you burn bridges, it's eventually going to hit you. And I guess that teaches you to put your mind in the right place, not to think negative. And I can tell you that as I grew up and I had my first company, that thing is not necessarily just something that my mother taught me. You find a lot of people doing so. And I remember I dealt with another merchant, and we had an opportunity to buy something together. And I told him, look, I know you have partners. If you want for the price, we're negotiating price. We can do it just you and I, so you can make some more money, but then I can pay less. And I remember that he told me, look, my partners are my true partners. I think that they're great people. I don't want to put my head over there. Everything I do it with them. And I respect it so much. And, you know, it kind of like took me back to my childhood. And I said, I'm glad I heard this. And from there on, every time I was on the other side where people asked me to, hey, let's cut a deal between us. was a lot easier for me to go and say no, because it just, you had that memory that tells you, this is where I come from. This is why we're doing this. Money is a piece of it, but it's an ingredient in a recipe. I'm not doing it only for the money, even though it's a component, it's not everything. I'm doing it because I enjoy that. It's a game. And I like to play honest. And if I win, it needs to be fair and square.
And you, with that belief in yourself, which is truly ingrained from that childhood, did you then expect that from the people around you in your business?
I mean, you get through lots of individuals. So I believe that if you're truly intuitive, and I don't know if you can really teach people that, there's a difference between being wired in a certain way versus if you really are trying to do things right, you don't need that much. It's fine. It's going to be okay.
And for those who don't know, can you just share a little bit around BoxyCharm? What is it? And then we'll dive into the journey after.
Sure. So BoxyCharm was a company that was my second company that I opened. It was a recurring revenue, monthly beauty subscription box. It started on the side in the garage when I had another liquidation business that I started as an international student. And it grew to about 500 million in sales 7 years later when I sold it for 500 million and to my competitors. The company was rolling basically from 2014, where we fully launched it, all the way to the end of 2020. We received a wire when we sold it in December 3rd or December 4th, 2020. So that was the time frame where we had the company, and it was growing very rapidly. It was always profitable the whole time. It was just more and more profitable as we grew more, which was an anomaly for a lot of buyers that they saw in investment, that not only they don't need money, every time they have money, they make more money. So,
sounds like a good investment.
Yeah, it was pretty good, but it's a stressful business, and it's one thing you never think about passing it on to your kids. So it was great journey, and selling it out was a relief. It was a little bit stressful. After 7 years, you don't know the underlying stress that you have in the day-to-day until you get out.
I'll be diving deep into that because I think that we can share some war stories around, the business journey, but then also the process of exiting. But let's take a step back. At what age were you when you moved from Israel to the United States?
I was 23, 22. 20, I was 2 years after the service. That's when I moved back.
And what was it like? Because that's you're reasonably old by that stage. You're very ingrained in that particular country.
23,
what was it?
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, adapting to the life in America is not a culture shock, right? It's you're coming from Israel to Florida. I mean, there is differences in culture. Obviously, it's different over here, but I fall in love. I love the Latin culture. They don't call it Florida. It's the Florida Republic. Just this is what it is over here. So you come down here, beautiful sunny sky most of the year, great weather. People are very nice. Nothing not to love. Yes, I did go to school. I enjoyed going to school over here. Lots of friends. But one thing happens to you when you come to America that you see, especially here in Miami, you see a lot of wealth. And you don't have any. My mother was working here as a living au pair. And I was really living on rice and ketchup when I came down. So you said to yourself, you know what? How does one get to obtain all this? What do you... and how is it new cash? How so much? From what? What are the... And it's fascinating for you, right? And you just feel lucky to be around this, to see this, to kind of like, it opens up your mind. And eventually, I remember the first opportunity that I have to open my first business. As I got the opportunity given to me, saying, well, here's a list of suppliers. You just buy it from them. You put it on a website. You flip it, but do a full try. I got a whole spiel of how to build a business without having any money, which is good because I didn't have any money. And that was the moment where I said, my life is changing. This is it. This is where I can... And I felt like this is a moment in history for myself, and that was all I needed. Just say no more. Give me the supply list. Tell me how do I get people to find my website. Something called search engine optimization. That was in 2003. What is that? Oh, well, you can control the algorithm if you know how to, the related key terms. And like, say no more. I'll figure it out. If it's just an algorithm and I can control the rank, I'll figure it out. I'm a machine. And that's it. My life changed in that moment.
So you mentioned there that this opportunity came to you. Can you just help me understand? Was it through someone you met or
Yes.
something you'd seen? How?
I was coming to my stepfather was somewhat getting scammed, where they sold him an opportunity to build a website and make $1,000 a month and so on. And he had that website that was never done, just something to find out about it. So let me go and figure it out. So I took that website and I told him, all right, so how are they going to send you suppliers? They never send them suppliers. Okay, so how are you going to buy stuff and sell it? I don't know. So I started looking for suppliers to buy and sell. I figured, let me figure it out. I'm full-time international student. I have to attend to classes. I have to get certain grades so I don't lose my status. But in the meantime, I will look for it. So for, I want to say 6 months to a year, every day until 2 or 3 a.m., until I would crash in front of the screen, I was looking for suppliers. And the whole time I could find nothing worth putting your time into it. Because if I wanted to sell this cup, and he said, well, let me go to a wholesaler, I buy it from him and I'll put it online. So they want to sell this cup for $2. I said, all right, I have to sell it at least for $4, so it's going to worth my time. You find out that when you go online, if he's selling wholesale for $2, online the wholesalers will sell it for $2 or less. So it's like, oh, I'm too low in the food chain. Just whatever I do, I can't open a physical location. I'm student. I don't have time for that. No money, nothing. I can only do it online, but I can't arbitrage. There's no room. Until one day I met someone that told me, yeah, but you need to go and do not a defined product. You need to get mixed items like general merchandise, excess inventory from department stores by the truckloads. So I was looking for an opportunity. How do I arbitrage? What I can do? And I found out that you can't just sell a piece of item and find it and sell it online with a margin, because the wholesalers here would sell it perhaps even more expensive than the retail one by one online. So it was very discouraging, and I just didn't stop every day. One day I go to a place and I was in Spanish class and I met this girl in my Spanish class, and she said, I worked for a liquidation company. We sell truckloads. And I said, I've heard about this, tell me more. And she said, yes, we sell truckloads, excess inventory. I thought I'm going to buy it from her and retail it. And that's when she said, no, you need to take the whole truck and flip the whole truck. Don't take piece by piece. You need to make every transaction cost like thousands, so it's worth it for you to put your time. And that's when I basically said, okay, but how do I get people to come and see my goods? And she said, well, that's SEO.
And what is the cost price of a truckload of goods?
I mean, it's all general stuff. You can go $6,000, $30,000, $50,000, $10,000, $500 or whatever it is, right? But they'll sell you a full truck or a full pallet, and you flip it the way it is. So you don't have to own it. You get a list of what's available. You put it on your website. People see it, and then you sell them what's available. They pay you. You collect the money. You send it to them. Now, easy, but how do you get people to find you? She said, well, you use those terms, liquidation, closeout, and you do SEO. That's when I learned what SEO is, and that's what changed my life. I said, okay, so now I was able to obtain my first marketing skills, which was SEO. That later on evolved to a lot more than just SEO. I had to also learn how to code and build a website. So I built a website. I got the knowledge of SEO. I had the phone was ringing off the hook, tons of emails, and eventually I had to learn how to build a business behind this, and not just me and another person to make it a real business. And I did. I ended up scaling the business. It was a lot of help, a lot better when I graduated and I finished my bachelor in business, because I had a year, call it OTP over here, to get your papers. And I just dedicated myself to it. And obviously the business took off from there. And then I got married, and the business really went from, say, $1 million to $10 million within 3 years.
Wow.
Just because I was busy. And then I found out the opportunity for a subscription box. So I kept running this company for 3 more years until I exit the liquidation business. And I sold it to a private equity.
Is that a public number? A number? No,
it's not public.
That's okay.
No, but I mostly sold it because I felt like, not only because I need to double down on one business, I just and didn't want any disruptions. Felt like it's such a complicated process where in the subscription box I go to a brand and I say, I will pay you the manufacturing cost for your product, and I will put it in my box to sample this to other people. But yet I have another liquidation business in the side, and why would I give you that, at cost? So I figured, let me get rid of this, so no one's going to be apprehensive working with me. I'll sell the company, can go back to it even if I want to, remember they told me, we're going to have to do 4 years non-compete in the liquidation. I said, you can put 40 years. I'm not going back to that. It's all good. But that was a piece of the process.
And with the subscription business, so a lot of people that are listening, they're either in those early stages of business or they're in their corporate jobs and they're thinking about taking that step. And a lot of people get stuck on the idea. What's the best right idea? It sounded like such a natural flow. Like, what was your process to actually find out and understand that world? Because it's very different to the liquidation business. How did you come across this concept, and why were you attracted to it?
So, the concept of ideas, everyone have ideas, right? Show me one human being with a working brain that has no ideas. So I give zero credit for ideas. Just because it's a great idea, there are lots of great ideas. But from a concept to execution and monetization, optimization, there's a Sahara Desert you have to cross. Now, ideas are great only if you get to try them. And if you fail fast. Every time you try something, you gain experience and you have a perspective, right? A perspective doesn't come from reading a book. Perspective only comes from experience. So you get a perspective of what works. So at first it's exploratory matter and you try a bunch of stuff, nothing worked, but you keep moving until you understand the parameters of your maze in life where you're at. And okay, there are walls here, let's make a right, let's make a left over here. And then eventually it starts coming together. And it's one foot in front of the other and you suddenly see that you made some progress. You're not hitting walls like before. You start doing a little bit better. And now you get a clue of what the space look like. A little bit better than before, but that wouldn't happen unless you hit couple walls and you bleed a little bit in your nose, right? This is where I respect. If you tell me about entrepreneurs that didn't start, I have zero advice for them. You're not an entrepreneur. You're just like everybody else, like the rest of humanity. The difference is doers versus non-doers. I like to advise to doers. The doers, and how can you tell if it's a doer? I have an idea. I'll tell you about this. You meet me a month later. I keep talking about that idea 2 months later. Why didn't you start? I'm waiting for my friend when he's going to finish. Did you do an LLC formation? Did you secure the domain? Did you get the social media handles? Nothing. All this time, you're a doer. Then you're not going to be in the pool of people I'm trying to advise, because really business like this is not for everyone, right? Now, those who try, that is already 10%. Okay, now with that I can work. Now how can I help you since you tried? Once you try, that means you don't mind failing. I can help you think about making the right decisions in the business, and we can go from there. But first, this is the crowd that needs the real, I would say, advice. If you're still in the corporate world and you have ideas, call me when you started something. That's when I can help.
I love that. It is so true. And I've worked with a couple of early stages, which I've stopped doing now, and those people. Specifically things come to mind where it's multiple years and they haven't launched the product. They've done stuff, they've iterated, they've built something, but they haven't yet launched to market, because often, they want it to be perfect because they don't want someone to be able to compete. And you're exactly right. It's like you only get to learn what perfection looks like through the, hitting those doors and hitting those walls. It's once you actually put it into market and then get feedback, that's when you actually start to learn.
That's also the reason I'm staying away from advice to people, because the people that they're waiting for the perfect weather, perfect conditions that would never ever come, or not cope to deal with challenges. I understand that it would never be perfect. I understand that the perfect conditions don't exist. And if you happen to have them, great for you, but they don't exist. And you need to know how to work in a stormy weather, right? So ultimately, your original idea will have to zigzag, mostly in the beginning, multiple times. You will have to have some issue. You will go through that process, right? And through that process that you go through, everything gets better. You get to learn so much. No one should rob you from that experience. This is what it makes us, right? All those trial and errors, without those trial and errors, without that experience of the trial and error, you're just a beginner. But it makes you move forward properly in the right movement. So you need that part. It's like, this is the best thing they need to understand, that you started. Yes, it will happen. It would never be perfect weather, and it's only up to you. A lot of startups are starting. They're doing everything except thinking about what's important, absolutely important and urgent for the business, because they would be so fixated on raising cash, and they get good at raising cash. So they would have been able to turn profit and learn the market a little bit different from the eye of the actual operator without cash. Those who don't know how to raise cash are seeing a whole different experience, and they have different opportunities to grow because they focus on profitability so they don't sink. And then they get to focus on the product or / service and get it better. And at the versus those who keep raising money that don't see the value in putting all their time in perfecting the product market fit because they're so obsessed with raising more money for the next stage. And then eventually when they can't, they can fall off a cliff because it's very hard to switch in your brain to be profitable all of a sudden. It's kind of like drinking Kool-Aid, and many of them just can't get out of it.
It's so interesting that you share that, because that's, I have this, a little bit of a thing that's stuck in my mind, because there has been, for the last 10-ish years, probably not for the last 2 years, but prior to that, that's almost been like the first gateway, which is, I've got the idea, we've built the first little bit of MVP, and now it's time to go raise capital. And you miss out on the opportunity to learn the principle of what it actually looks like to make a business. And
ask yourself the question, not every business is the same, because if you ask me, can every business start without operating under debt for a while? No, because the ideas are different, right? So it's good if you have that skill, but some companies are really on the border of that. They can sell their product, learn through it what clients really want, improve it. They don't need to raise, versus going through the route of raising where you go and you start building a whole chain of command, C-levels, VPs, directors, like tiered organization. They all need to eat. They all need to get paid. By the time you actually, just so hard, versus a very lean business with 4 people, just trying to scramble together, putting it piece by piece, making a little bit of money, but they're all eating rice right now and they're good with that. And then eventually they start turning profit, and okay, now we can hire another person. Now we can hire another person, and they go. It's just a different route. You can find that everything, all the standard operating procedures in both companies are going to be different. The entire vision is different. Everything is different. 2 different organizations, even if they sell the same product.
Yes. So now bring me to, what were the key learnings that you had from the first business that you rolled into BoxyCharm, that you were like, okay, I did this right, and now I need to kind of double down on the next business?
So when I compared the two, there are so many differences on one hand, because the first business was business to business. Yes, it was marketing, but the marketing was on the search engine and not necessarily much on social media, even though I had some social media because it took off. Versus the other one, BoxyCharm, that it's direct to consumer. And imagine when you buy from a liquidation company, a wholesale liquidation company for your store, you keep your suppliers until you die. Like, you tell no one, maybe your kids before you die. But when you have a beauty box and a lady gets it every month, and she was happy with this, she would snap a picture and post this online. So the skill that I was able to bring is understanding algorithms in platforms. So I understood Instagram, YouTube, how it worked early on and so on, but there was a lot to learn outside of that. I had some infrastructure that I was able to leverage in the beginning and so on. I would say that there's so much that needed to be learned, because one company had 15 employees, the other one had 150. One was doing 10 million in sales, the other one was 500. You're not the same person. You cannot be the same person. It only gave you some leverage to start off without making a major investment, because you have already warehouse space. You have some employees in the warehouse, in the office. You can leverage a lot in the beginning. That's why an infrastructure for any business that's okay business can be a great stepping stone for the next business, because you don't have to deal with all the bureaucratic stuff like LLC formation, all that.
Yes.
You just give it to a secretary, and you can focus on what's important for the business. And you can see if it works or not. If it doesn't, you can shut it down. If it works, you move on, right? So the business skills that I had allowed me to know how to grow a business to a certain size. From there on, I was on my own. I needed to, so I did a $10 million now within, 2014 was 1.2, but then 2015 was 10. So something that took me 10 years, I think 10 years to reach 10 million. Now it took me 24 months.
That's actually really interesting. Do you know what else is interesting? the Eat with Purpose cookbook. It's part of my mission to raise $1 million for charity. This podcast is part of that goal, and what you can do is like, comment, share, and leave us a review. Let's get back to the guest.
To get to that number. So it was, and then from there on, it was completely different. So the experience, the original experience is what founded me. That's what built me. All the mistakes, all the stuff I had to do in the other business. Over here, I was able to move a lot faster.
It's incredible. So 1.2, the following year, you're doing 10. The growth there, as I reflect on our own business journey, I'm just like, my mind gets blown as we were talking offline. Like, what do you think some of those key ingredients that you did for that first year to be able to scale like that for the following year?
It's all about the product. The product has to, so unfair advantage and also momentum. So the concept was trending. For beauty was trending, subscription box was trending. You're just riding a wave and you're coming in great. But then it's not enough because it's just a matter of time until more competitors can come in. Because if I can come in with almost nothing, that means there's a very low barrier to enter. But what's going to make it different than the rest? And, if you look at second movers, 87% of the second movers are going to make it. And they'll succeed in their business. Only 11% of first movers get to make it in their business. Because, the second movers, they have a proof of concept. Now, in some cases, some of the second movers take over the space because the first movers did not evolve for a competitive environment.
Yes.
It's exactly what happened in my space versus other spaces that it didn't happen. But if you want to get a classic example, it's MySpace was perhaps the first mover in that space. Facebook was the second mover, but they did capitalize on the fact that they were able to do whatever they want, 7 years, not even trying to make money, while the other one was obsessed with making money, and then they took over, and who knows what MySpace is today. So those things happen, and the idea is that you have a focal point, and you said, okay, I'm not the first mover, but that's why if I'm coming as a second mover, I truly have to capitalize on that. I can't just go and do what all the other second movers are doing. Let me go and completely double down. And for me, it was kind of easy because I looked at the space and I said, why are they even calling me? I heard about this because I had a liquidation company. Subscription box would buy for me product once a while because their concept was get free products from the brand. And when you cannot, go to a liquidation company and get whatever you can for pennies on the dollar. So I said, okay, so your entire premise in this model is that you're going to get free stuff. So what if I find the economics to pay the cost of goods? Okay, so most companies are going to do $10 a month. I'll do 21. I have one competitor that does 21, but they also ask for free stuff. But I can see why. The packaging is very beautiful, heavy, a box within a box with crinkled papers, with so many packaging behind this. What if I just make a very basic packaging and I put all this into products? You find out that you can easily save about $10 just to put in products and still turn profit, and no one else does that. But when you choose with money and you choose what you want and you do it only full size, you can select the best products out there. You can be very selective. And it wasn't hard to convince brands to say, look, if you're doing a sampling product, don't give me what you're stuck with. Give me the products that are going to best represent you to the highly engaged consumers. So when they go to Sephora, you're going to be a destination in Sephora. They're going to walk to your gondola because they tried already your product. And we did see that it works. It actually did move the needle for brands across the country. So it was a lot easier. And then guess what? It cost you absolutely nothing because I pay you the cost of goods. So where do you have the money? I just increased the cost of the box. Why would they pay more? Because they pay $20-some to get something that costs $150 in stores. So for them, it's a good deal. You pay absolutely nothing. You get free marketing. And I still turn profit, about 28% contribution margin. So it's a really win-win-win situation. Everyone's happy about that. And at first, a lot of the competitors thought we're losing money, we're burning through cash. So for the first few years, no one was trying to do what I was doing because they said, no, they're eventually going to run out of cash. They can't be turning profit like this. But we were just so precise with the weight of the box to be under a pound. Because if you're a pound more, it's an extra $3 in shipping. And then the packaging has to be completely from a product that's going to be cheap. It looks nice, but it is a collapsible box and it's going to be easier to erect it and put it back to. Everything had to be to the T. And we got really good at doing that. And Only when we made 500,000 members, our biggest competitor decided to do the same.
Wow.
At that point, we were too big to kill. You know, and I was running to. I needed to build. I did not care about profitability. As long as we're breaking even or just with the head above water, I am good.
So you're just reinvesting.
Yeah, because everything goes back to the engine. Because it's all of, now when you have a larger subscriber base that are paying you, the MOQ goes down.
What's MOQ for the audience?
Oh, so when you purchase a product, the manufacturing order quantity, manufacturing order quantity.
Yes.
So if you order 10,000, your cost would be say $1. But if now you're asking for 250,000, it can drop to 60 cents. So now instead of putting the money in my pocket because I dropped the MOQ, I said, no, let me get a better product. So as I scaled, I made better and better boxes. So the engine kept growing and people were thinking, how is he still turning profit? But I was turning the same exact profit. It just, I have larger orders now. So that was our ethos. We wanted to be cool. How can you be cool? How can you be cool? Well, your product has to be with a margin better than number 2 and consistent, and then a bunch of other things. But ultimately being cool means everyone talks about you. You're the conversation. When they mention subscription box, your name needs to come up first, as a synonym to subscription box. And that was our goal, and everything funneled from there. So as long as you turn profit, we need to grow.
And I think that's an important thing for everybody here because I've recently had an incredible business that's doing amazing numbers in only a few years. You know, the question is, hey Frank, is it time that we take some money off the table? It's about year 2 or year 3, and again, reflecting with our business, we bootstrapped right until the sale, and we only took our first dividend in maybe year 8, right? With the same kind of philosophy. For you, what was it? At which year was it that you decided to let's take a little bit of money off the table? Or did you just keep reinvesting, and be able to manage that growth?
Honestly, I didn't really take ever any money off the table like this. We just took salaries and that's it.
Nice.
When I sold a piece of it, that's when I took money from equity that I gave, but not taking out. I just didn't, as much as people think that money is everything, I felt like taking money off the table can absolutely happen, depends on the circumstances. In our case, it was just going way too fast.
Yeah.
And you understand that you have paper money, you don't have the real cash, but you understand that you can sell and you can get all that cash later. So anything you take out, you will need it maybe in a catastrophe, and you always feel, and if not, let me just put it back because I want to do this and I want to do that. So that's why it's going to be important to put it back in the business. My mind wasn't going there. But again, every business has different conditions. Like sometimes you definitely need to take money out. I don't want to say you shouldn't. In my cases, it would have been, derail. I was, the concept of a goal-oriented business versus not. The main difference between a goal-oriented business versus non-goal-oriented business is that first, a goal-oriented business actually have a goal, a defined goal that every employee needs to know. And every decision have to funnel through that. So you say, well, why did you make that decision? And that decision would eventually lead to, because that is the goal, then we did this, so that's going to happen. And in our case, we had one goal: to grow, have more members, grow. As long as you're profitable, grow. Which means don't try to optimize your profit, don't try to take money home, just grow. As much as you grow faster, you can always turn the profit button. Always, whenever you want. But why doing it when it moves so fast? When do you do it? Well, when it plateau. If let's just say, because every market has a certain size, right? So let's just say we are at most going to get X members. If I see that our growth is so fast, that means the ceiling is so much there. So get to it when you get to it. And ideally, you don't get to it before you sell, because you want to sell when you don't need to sell, right? And that was our philosophy. So it's like there was no time. Like you're still doubling every year. Yeah, I can take money off the table, but if that would slow me down from the growth, like no, don't let that get into your head. Grow, and that was the mission. And we did this up until the exit.
It's It's absolutely incredible. Can I ask? So year one is 1.2, year two is 10, and is it?
No, year one, 2014 was 1.9, then 10, then 20, then 50, then 137, then 230 something, then 470.
Wild. Yeah. So help me understand. In those moments, what would you say the biggest years of challenge for that growth was?
Between 15 to 17, the end of 17. The biggest growth challenge was scaling the organization. People would always be your challenge. Yes. And it's not because it was people's fault. It was my inexperience of scaling from a flat organization into a tiered organization. And that was the critical part, right? And I tried everything I can. I mean, I remember I read The Art of War with Sun Tzu, and it was just a challenging part because, again, coming down to perspective, it only comes from experience. How do you know who's the right person to help you, who to hire, how to hire? And it really came down to a challenge where we made about at least 30 million to 50 million. That was our tough point, between 20, 30 to 50, because we were still flat. A very, very talented team that we hired here in Miami. Young, mostly women, obviously. It's a beauty industry. And the idea was to get as many members, but then you have a lot of ideas you want to execute. The problem is all those employees we had were amazing, but they're still kids. And they behave sometimes very childish with each other, a lot of drama. It's all women, and it's like you're a guy in a woman's world, and they start arguing with each other, and he's like, I wish I had some more layers so I don't have to deal with this, because they'll come to your office and hello, what happened? Why are you crying? She was mean to me. What do you mean? She was right in front of me. Yes, but you didn't see how she said, And apparently they have a whole language with each other. They just don't look, and they're just so different. So you have to understand all this. And it was hard, right? But at the same time, when you bring someone in to manage them, they're so good that when they see someone above them as a manager, they don't respect that person. So why is she going to be my manager? She doesn't know anything. I have to teach her, but yet she's my manager, and she's right. But that lady is more mature, but yet she also needs to be respected. So you kiss a lot of frogs until you come to a point that, okay, I need to hire from the top. I can't just hire a manager quality. I need to hire from the top a COO that will be respected, that can pick up everything, but have done stuff that none of us did. And that was the focal point for us. I decided to hire a COO that came from, he couldn't come from the subscription box because it was just us and two other companies, and you can't. But it was important that at least they're going to come from the e-com space.
Yes.
So when Chewy exit, was an opportunity to hire people from Chewy. So we hired a great COO. And I wanted to make sure that we're doing 50 million, but I wanted someone 50 to 100 million in sales going to whatever, hundreds and hundreds or billions. So Chewy he was there when Chewy was doing 100 million all the way to $2 billion.
Wow.
So, and he was a VP, so he saw the evolution, he saw how the company was operating, and said, yeah, this is usually what you're going to have to go through. This is how you tier the organization. This is what we saw in our case. So he's done something that we need to go through already. Yes. He's been through that path. And that was definitely the best decision I took with the advice of my investors. Hire from the top, someone that have seen that path before, kind of like as an officer in another company. And he was able to tier the organization underneath me with the right people. You kind of learn a lot through that process. You learn that to scale the organization with people, yes, you'll kiss a lot of frogs. You maybe can get a couple points of how to optimize the screening process, but the more important part, I feel, is not to retain the wrong people. If you retain them less than your competition, eventually you're going to win. Like the screening process, you'll improve. Your screening process, they'll improve, whatever. But it really comes down to retaining the wrong people longer. You're going to lose. If you fire faster the wrong ones, eventually you're going to win. It's kind of like gym versus food. Food is 60, 70%. Gym is not enough. So that's how I would compare it.
Incredible. And how did your How did your role evolve in those, let's say from years 1 to 4, there's a very different skill set, and then from 4 to exit, like what were the things that you had to really double down? Because your business was doubling every year. I'm imagining your knowledge and expertise and ability to execute is almost having to do it at the same pace.
Yeah, so if you learn new skills at the time when you need to know them, or when you need to learn them, it doesn't ever go away. You can tell the different. I mean, I noticed the different. I sold obviously more than one company, and I saw the difference between the way I operate versus the people who bought my company. Where as I scaled the organization, my day to day was I had to do less and less things. So it's like 1 or 2 things. That's it. In the beginning, you do a bunch of stuff because you wear all the hats in the world. But as you scale, ideally for me, I was in very few meetings, doing very few things, if that. I had 1 or 2 things I cared about. And once in a while, I'll jump into other stuff. But I was less busy. My time was open. And I guess the skill behind this is to kind of like screen all the semi-important I would say, decisions you need to take. If you take too many decisions at one point, that means your operation is going to be spread across a million things. In BoxyCharm, it was, I don't mind how many battles I lose as long as I win the war. That means there's always that one big battle that is the urgent and important that you got to win. So put what you have on that one. If the rest are minuscule, doesn't matter. I don't have to do everything. And that was our decision. So the day-to-day was only on products, really only on products and marketing. I did not have to deal with when there's a little crisis in some other departments, of course, I'll dive into it. And I was literate about every piece in the business. But I was able to really put myself into looking at the space all day because I was free. I was able to read the space. Anything that happens, I was alert from a mile away. And the procedure that we had was very lean, only about what's important and urgent. So instead of having everyday corporate meetings where everyone has to give reporting every day and so on, we had it once a week for 1 hour. And all we needed to know is couple questions. What is the health of the business week by week for the next few weeks? Okay, this is what it looks like. Okay, this is where we're going to be on the red. If we don't do this, we know every minute by minute. What are the shipments? Is there anything that's delayed with one item that might be critical to build the boxes? We need to know it in advance. Okay. Are there any boxes that were shipped that are going to be shipped late? Who are the affected members so we can contact them directly so it doesn't hit social media and we can improve their experience like this. Those were the important and urgent, and it took us a minute to get to it. It took us over a year to perfect that 1 hour stand-up meeting for everybody. Because you learn that you can talk about a lot of stuff that are not important, but they're not important enough to talk about. And people can talk about this in their setting. The idea is that I would say, chief supply chain officer doesn't need to hear the new marketing idea that it's pointless right now. Just tell him what he needs so he can go back to work and do it. Okay, and what does he need to hear? Well, listen, we're going to give you some marketing materials in your boxes. Can you do it? Okay, that is for him. But anything else, just ideas or whatever. So we had to strip a lot of the discussions and the people. We made it as least people as we need, one per department, and only talk about what we have to talk about, and then go back to work.
Love that.
So that's a skill.
It's a huge skill. It's something that's interesting. As I reflect, selling a private company into a public company, it's probably the biggest thing I noticed is going from my week was probably similar, maybe 3 to 4 meetings in a week, and the important ones, right? Like talking to a big client and things like that. That's the kind of meetings that I want to be having. And then moving into the corporate, and the standard person would have 20 in a week. And you just go like, how can you execute? And I think that's why it's a big challenge that a lot of businesses need to be able to figure out through, because it's just like as the organization gets more and more bloated, it was only this week we saw someone who was on walking around on a Zoom on their phone, simultaneously had a laptop on a Zoom and was chatting to us, and you're like,
It's insane, right?
It's so common too.
Yeah. If you take everyone that was doing the corporate world before they came to me after I sold, they said we're back in the corporate world. It wasn't like that before, and I didn't really understand how it works like this. Why would they do it? Because eventually you understand that when you have like a real bureaucratical business where the VPs and above are always in meetings, they're not executionaries. They eventually don't know how to do. Even if they knew in the past, because they've been out of it for so long and they're only sitting in meetings, they don't know how to really do it. And usually it leads to hiring agencies. And it's not because they can't do it and they don't want to dive into it. It's because they have to cover their ass in case something don't work. Oh, it was the agency's idea. This way you can, and the CEOs needs to be very vigilant, letting their business come to it. Because no one starts off this way. I mean, not successful ones at least. Because if you were, you would never make it, right? No, it's okay because what you are in the beginning is not there. But there's the rule, the square root of your employees. I don't know if you heard of it.
No.
Well, they're saying the square root of your employees will do 50% of the job. So 4 people, 2 will do 50%.
Wow.
But now you go to 100 employees, 10 will do 50%. If it's 1,000, 33, right? And you can go on and on where they say, globally, you have 8 billion people, about 40, 50,000 people. It's like a small town will do 50% of the work.
Wow, yeah.
And that's just reality. That's what it is. So you ask yourself, how can my company will not be this way? So if you have 100 people versus 100 people, mine would be more like 40 people will do 50% when there are only 10 people doing 50%. So, and it can only happen where the company is polishing up a lot of those unnecessary meetings with too many people that don't have to be in the meetings, and they focus on the results and not on the process. If you focus on the process, which is very common, you're so obsessed with the process, eventually you're going to hit walls that are in front of you and you can see it. I gave this it's a case study. I gave this to my employees about Motorola. I don't know if you know the case study with Motorola with their satellite phones. Do you know that story?
I do, but please share.
So, in the 90s, they had an engineer that sunk $10 billion to Motorola because he had a great idea where at the time satellite phones had that slight delay, like a quarter second of a delay when you spoke. And he said, well, if we use a different satellite fleet on a different orbit, using different frequency, we can eliminate that delay. And they did some modeling, $10 billion, 10 years. Said, let's not waste time, let's go, let's do it. 10 years later, they found out that the demand for satellite phones fall off a cliff. Nobody needs it anymore. And they end up, the whole business ended up bankrupt because they needed X amount, I think they needed 60,000 subscribers in the first 6 months, they only had 3,000. At the time, by 2000, when they finished, everyone had a cell phone because there were not enough antennas. So the demand was, but who built most of those antennas? They did. Motorola built all those antennas. But you say, well, why didn't they see it through those next 10 years? Well, because they're too focused on the process. And no one stopped and said, guys, the demand for satellite phone is falling through the roof, and knowing why, we're the one that's causing it. We're not going to need satellite phones in 10 years. How about we just stop now? We lost $1 billion, let's not keep, but no one does that. So my idea was that that's a company that's focused on the process, not the results. In our company, everyone have an imaginary red button. If you feel we're doing something that's not going to work, come to me, come to your manager. You'll never be, no one is going to go and tell you, why did you step on someone's toe? Because you can, we need you to go and do it. And that was the idea in my company, to make sure that everyone has an imaginary red button. If we need to stop, we stop.
Where did I first hear that? That was it off the conveyor belts for Toyota, the red button story? Have you heard that before?
So the big story about the automobile, the Japanese automobile versus the American car automobile, it was exactly that. Finance major versus engineering major. I'm trying to perfect the product here. I'm trying to do maximum profit short term for my quarterly earnings. And in Japan, they would have a red button. Any issue, they would stop. If in the United States, back then at least, never do that. We have to analyze the cost of the lawsuits versus shutting down. And that's what dragged the whole American automobile industry up to Tesla until Tesla showed up and took over the world. But that was exactly what it was. And that was the analogy. You're correct.
Love it. So knowing that one of your key skills and focuses was on the marketing. I'd love to get an insight with you. What were the marketing efforts that you focused on, and what do you think was the unique piece that allowed you to continue to scale and ultimately smash it?
So, beautiful question. Let's start with the fact that I did not want to bother with marketing unless I have a great product that's worth marketing.
Yes.
So your best piece of marketing is your product first. Get a product that sells itself, that's pervasive. That's the first thing. So take all the time you need to perfect that. Don't go and sell an average product. If you can, go and have a superior product. And my analogy would always be iPhone or Tesla. Just come up with a product that there is no second to it. And that helps you with the cool factor. Now, the second piece behind this is then go and have a phenomenal marketing. Then the marketing comes. Now, how easy it is when you have a box that smokes the competition every time, and how easy it is when the box itself trending, because every month everybody want to know what's there. So then influencers say, well, if I actually promote them versus the teeth whitening strips that offered me the same money, but those guys are at least cool. Let me do that. So it was a lot easier, right? When you're cool to be marketed for you, you'll pay less and you'll get more. So, and then you come up with great marketing tactics, which talk about this all day long. Then you have to really dominate that space. And I feel like the biggest part for us was building a community, truly community, not just having content post down there. It's just there was the underlying community that was very, very solid. And how we built it was something that I'm very proud of. At the time, it was possible. Today, it's possible, but not in the same way.
And explain to me the community concept. So you like, why did that come to your mind, and then how did you execute on the community?
Yeah. My competitors kept saying, we have the best community, we have the biggest community, and kind of like pissed me off. And I'm like, fuck those guys. Like, no one talks about them anyway. They keep saying they have a community. Anyway, what the fuck is a community? Do I even know what community is? So I Googled, and it says on Google that community is a group of people in the same space with the same interest activating together. Like, okay, let me see. So online, I can feel I'm getting more discussions. I get good. But let me see. So I went on Facebook, and I noticed at the time Facebook was more than what it is now. Facebook groups, at the time they used to call it forums.
Yes.
I noticed that there are communities that called BoxyChum this, BoxyChum that. They would actually have my company name, and all they did were talking about products that they got, swapping and all that. And I said, okay, at first I just wanted to see their sentiment. So I joined those forums. And I remember that when you join the forums, you have to get accepted. So I'm the only dude over there with a beard. And they said, hey, listen, we don't accept men over here. But we did read that you're the founder of BoxyChum. Is it true? Is it a bunch of bullshit? I'm like, listen, I am. I just want to see the sentiment over the box. But hey, listen, I don't want to come in between ladies. It's all good. If just don't approve me. It's fine. Like, no, we're honored. So they got me in. And that's when it hit me. Wait a minute. This is the space. Same people with the same interest in the same space. Now, when they're talking, technically it's an activation, but if I can amplify that activation, let's see. Because they are kind of like the super subscribers, they literally call each other charmers, because that's a term that we used on social media. How about I give them something that no one else had before? So everybody want to know what's going to be next month in the box. I'm going to sneak it to them before anybody. And that's when it blew up.
Wow.
Every time, and you find out that the algorithm within those forums are so different, you can get anything viral. And so they went from like 2,000, 3,000 members in those forums and I had only 3 forums in the beginning, to close to 100 forums. And the biggest one had 90,000 people. And anything I would say would go viral within the forums, and it would go from the forums, so many of them at once, it would go viral. So I learned that when I say anything to them and I cause them in action, meaning I would say, do you want to know what's going to be next month in the box? So there would be like 1,000 comments. Of course. And it's okay, tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern time, I'm going to give you a sneak peek somewhere. I'm not telling you where. You would have a couple 100,000 members at the same time searching BoxyChum. Everything you're going to post would go viral. Because it spikes. I would go on Google Trend and I would look at the second when I do it, how the trend, because you can do it by the hour. You type in BoxyChum and you can see by the hour the spike. You would have more than whatever discussion goes on, it was heavier, because the idea is that you don't want 300,000 to search you over 30 days. You want them within the first 3 minutes. And that's where every trigger for Google, for Facebook, for Meta, they see that you're trending. And anyone that would mention you would go viral at that point. Anyone. So then everybody wants to keep mentioning. So I would do it 3 times a month. From the moment I found out about this, it was in 2017 all the way to 2020 when I sold the business. Every month I would viral myself like this 3 times. And everyone else that talks about this. So guess what? Everyone has to mention BoxyCharm now to stay relevant. Because they don't know why you keep going viral when you mention BoxyCharm. So all the discussions around BoxyCharm. So that was, I would say, you can look at a lot of things we did in marketing, but that probably is the one that I'm proud of, because this is the only time I haven't seen someone doing something in another category, notice that, duped it to my category, and now I have my little unfair advantage because that no one does that in that category. This was literally all me, and I was probably the most impactful piece. So it was really rewarding seeing that it works every month like a clock. Yeah.
That is one of the coolest stories I've ever heard. There's a couple of things I just want to dive into that I just love there. Firstly, the idea that everybody's using the language of the business, the charmers, incredible. Next is that people are so focused on your product that they want to create a group to talk about your product. Yeah. That is an incredible power. And, for people listening, it's okay, well, maybe I don't have a direct consumer. It's but those are your true advocates, and everybody in a business will have a true advocate if you have a good product. And it's you realize, how do I, best help those people, because they will spread the word of mouth. And then, finding out that viral trend there is just...
that feeling is because you go and you actually, nothing is zeros and ones, but this one was. You really go on Google Trend and you would see the spike every time, and you ask, okay, what did you do as a CEO? When I told you up until 2017, I had to form a structure for the business that was no longer a startup. Now let's move to the enterprise level and let's make sure that I can scale. How do you do it? And once you scale from there, it's infinite. And so that was the first part. But 2017, when I had that time of my hand, and now I don't have to manage every activation because I did tier the organization in a healthy way, not too much, exactly where it needs to be, and it's in a healthy way. Everything is functional, everything works well. Now I was able to focus on things that, for some reason, you cannot find great marketers to work for you. They usually have their own businesses, and you can find all the big companies that the founders are they are the influencers. Elon Musk is a great example for that. Anastasia Beverly Hills in the beauty industry, it's the same thing. So no one's going to do it for you. And that was my thing. And now I'm not a woman, so I can't really tell people how to apply anything, how to apply this lipstick. That's not me.
Yeah.
But I figured, what can I do? And that was my contribution, marketing-wise. That was the biggest contribution.
Incredible. And that just showcases that ability when you do step back and drop the things and focus on what I can do as an individual that'll make the biggest impact. Because I'm sure per month you probably spent an hour writing.
Oh, yeah. It wasn't too long. I mean, there was a lot of hours and hours before to see new content buckets that can work, and there's a bunch of other things behind the scene. But yes, that was just a small amount of time.
Incredible. So just probably a couple more questions before we wrap up. The last one would be, with regards to the business and the process. What was that sale process like for you? Did you make a competitive process and have lots of people involved, or did someone approach you? What did that look like?
Yeah. So because I sold the business I sold a piece of it to a private equity. I told them, you guys know how to sell businesses. I know how to sell boxes. I'm just going to help you when you sell the business. Tell me what we need to do. But my job would be to continue selling as many boxes as we can. So throughout the 6 to 8 months due diligence process, the business will keep shining. And it was a great combination. They're amazing. We did go through a round. We went through investment bankers. We had to screen them first. I was letting them run this, and that was a good decision because I was basically being handheld. Okay, come, we have the meeting with Goldman Sachs, we have the meeting with Morgan Stanley or Chase, whatever it is. Then we chose the partners, it was Morgan Stanley. From there, we went through a process of training. They train you how to speak. You think you know how to say everything, but it's pretty impressive actually. You sit down and they said, all right, tell me, do you feel there is a synergy to work with IPSI? Or they'll ask you different questions. And and they would tell you why they asked this and what would they ask you that if they ask you. And then one thing you don't want to say is this, but then that's what they want to hear. It was actually fun.
Yeah.
You know, it was really, really fun. Then you do the road show, which again, it's a surreal moment. Flying to New York, high rises, overlooking great views, sitting in offices, just surreal that you get to that point. And then you start talking to major, buyers from Target to you'll be surprised.
Wow.
And you can't believe you're actually sitting in front of the M&A team of, I don't know, Bain Capital or so on. It was just very, very nice. We were supposed to sell in March 2020, the end of March 2020, where the whole world fell apart. And I told my partners, guys, let's do it in February. I have a bad feeling.
Wow.
I told them that around October because I noticed that shipments are being delayed because of a virus in China.
Wow.
And I told them, guys, I'm not a doomsday guy, but I'm telling you now, do it in February. I feel like if it's in March, we're not going to sell. They said, no, we have to. It's okay. I'm like, fine. Maybe it is in my head. You know what? And then March 15, they shut down the country. So everyone came back and said, let's put a pause till the end of the year. They all signed that on March 25th. That's it. It's final. We missed it in just 10 days. But that was the best thing that happened because then our competitors, they actually came 2 weeks before the whole thing happened.
Yes.
And they gave us an offer. We said it's too low and we walked away. Then they came up with an offer that was 100 million more than the next one.
Wow.
And then they ended up buying for that price. And so everything happened, but we had to start all over again with them. So then we ended up selling at the end of the year. We had to start all over again. And I was like, and you feel so exhausted already because every process like this is exhausting. It's exhausting because it's a process that doesn't contribute to your business. And it's only good if it worked. Right? It's very binary, yes or no. There's no gray in between. So now you have to start all over again. And now this time you have only one buyer. They did know that they were the only buyers. They thought there are more buyers. Or maybe they did. I don't think they knew. But then you have to go through it again. But that process is recommended for everybody to go through. Great process.
It grows you as a person, doesn't it?
It grows.
Yeah. It's interesting as you share that. I think about the process for myself, and it's like it was very grueling. And I think the key piece there that often you don't realize until you go into it is the binary piece like you touched on. You are spending a lot of money. You're spending a lot of money to go through these processes, to do the due diligence and things like that. And there is an outcome on the other end of that could just be it wasn't successful. Yeah. And you've spent millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah, I guess the mental part is the biggest toll that you say, I'm about to retire. Here's you get a lot of money now, like kind of crazy from the movies. And this you just really want to go through it just for the prestige that you're able to. A big piece of it. And when things fall apart, if they fall apart, how are you going to get another buyer to pay you that, right? It's like, oh man, it's so exhausting and you have to go through this. And my biggest advice for anyone that goes through excessive negotiation like this, that's a life-changing event, either divorce or selling a business, and it really comes down to the last man standing. It will be a point where there's going to be a lot of standoffs, where people are going to ask for whatever it is, and every time you're giving in any kind of standoff, you're increasing the probability for another one because you show weakness. So coming down to it, it is about the last man standing, and usually the last day where everything has to come together. Make sure that you have food with you, water. Get a good night's sleep before that, because if you start the process at 2 p.m., you might end up at 6 a.m. And people from tiredness get to be much more emotional and they're giving in. All right, they wanted to remove another 200 million, another $1 million, a couple millions on this and a couple millions on that. And then eventually the dollar that you're supposed to get shrunk to 70 cents. Plus you have to agree to maybe a different payment terms now that you can get it over. If you every standoff, we end up winning because we were having a plan in advance in case we don't sell. And I was asking my partners to go through this because I told them, look, I'm used to sell $25 boxes. You guys used to sell $300-400 million businesses. For you, it's normal. For me, if you tell me, okay, we're not going to get 300, we're not going to get 400 million, we're going to get 350. I'm like, fine, it's okay, let me get it. I'm not a good negotiator in that point, right? So how can I help myself not to be that way? Is how can we plan that if we don't sell, I'm still going to be excited? So we said, all right, if we don't sell, we're going to go and do dividend recap, which we can pull out about 100 million for us. We're going to take a loan from the bank. We can, because this is how much we make. And then we take it public, and we're probably going to make a lot more money on a public exit. So if we don't sell, we're still cashing out, and we're going to be the zero loss of equity, and we're going to go public. And public market was by far more attractive. So we said, okay, this is just easy right around the corner. If we can get this one good, if not, we have another step to go. And that was a lot easier for me, at least, to stand up. And every time when there was a point where they said, well, we're going to take off, I think there was $9 million that they want to take off. I said, okay, here's the termination papers. No need to continue then. We're ready to cancel. Every dollar that you spent, they probably spent 10.
Yes.
A due diligent to buy is by far more expensive than the due diligent than your end of the money, right? Nobody wants to lose that. And and we knew exactly why they need to buy us. And by the end of the day, it was kind of like important for both companies to combine. Yep. It was kind of like a world domination. Yes. And it's like, it was really, really important for both of us to combine, because it's a lot more powerful company together, and you get tired of competing, like knives into each other, and just like, let's stop this. So nobody wanted to continue that, and that was eventually coming together.
Awesome. As you reflect on the journey that's been with the multiple businesses, what would you say you're most proud of?
Oh wow, the ability to evolve the way you think would definitely be a big piece of it. The evolution in your head, how do you take away all the cables that you tie into a tree that stops you from truly grow? You see, when I started first business, it was really to pay the out-of-state tuition. And then you get to be comfortable and you make some money and you're stuck for like a year or two. And you think you're doing great because you're taking home, I don't know, 600,000, whatever. And you think it's great. Until you hear that your competitor basically takes home 2.5 million. You said, what? Okay, so now suddenly you get that drive, and then you find that someone else does better, and you find that, wait a minute, why didn't I have that drive before? Why did I need to hear that they're making that? What happened to me? Like, I really changed. As soon as I heard that, I modified it, and I ended up doing the same. I just had to hear this. It was in me. I had the ability. I thought I was ambitious. I was not. I needed to hear this every time. It's just that ability to understand that and to say, okay, I assume it happened to me because I felt comfortable because I came from real nothing to little something. So now I'm hood rich kind of thing, right? It's like I have a little money. But ultimately, I'm not nothing compared to other people. So then you come into a new business, like the box, and you hear your competition say, we grossed 100 million when you're doing 10. It's like, okay, now it doesn't look too far out because your competitor does that. So it really does help you fall. But then how do you compete when you beat your competition? And I kind of learned that as long as my mindset is that I need to do better than yesterday, it doesn't matter how much the industry is, even if I'm at the top and there's no one else to compete with, it's forever. If I just need to be motivated to do the better than yesterday, the thinking of hundreds of millions wouldn't have come easily. In 2014, perhaps I wasn't the right person to think like that. It took me to get to 2017 when you hire people that work for companies that scale this way, and being with partners that have seen companies who scale this way, to talk about this casually, and in your mind it doesn't sound like a big deal. It's important.
Love that. And I the last question I have for you is reflecting, on your childhood and the upbringing you had, and of course, post exit, and we're in your incredible home today, and it'll be very different for your kids. Mm-hmm. What are the values that you want to instill in them?
I love that. I'm still in a searching for a phase for that, by the way, because you see rich kids that are doing amazing, that they can take over the wealth to another place. There are beautiful people inside out, inspirational people, and something did motivate them. And then you see the other side, right? There's that statistic where the third generation loses all the money. And you ask yourself, how can I make sure it doesn't happen? Not because I build the trust, skip generation trust and all that. What do I need to do to give my kids that ability? Now, my kids are still small, young. I guess that's a better English term, right? But ideally, I'm still in the search of virtuous. How do I build them to be good successors, right? And I'm just friends with people who have that, and I just instill the same thing. I'm trying to do the same. Ultimately, nothing is more important than teaching your children how to hunt. You don't want to go and just tell them, there's a lot of food in the fridge when I die. I want you to, here is a bow and arrow. You come with me as young lions and as my cubs. We're going to go and hunt together, and let's do it. And that's my goal, to give them tools and let them understand that, listen, I don't even know if I'm going to leave you any money. I am, but I just don't want them to think everything's going to go to them. Ideal is that they need to have the drive and to instill the drive of the doing, the action, the fun of achieving, the self-actualization. That's what I want to go and bring it over to my children, and not to just hand it over to them. So that's probably going to be the next challenge. I think everyone is struggling with this.
That's why I asked the question, because I'm always thinking.
Do you have kids of your own?
I have a 2-year-old son, so it's early days, and it's. I think.
Is he making money already?
Yeah. He's out there washing cars.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, start early.
It's just like, it's what are those daily actions that you create to create? Because I think we hear these similar traits. It's around that resilience, the drive, the hunger. And
are you going to put him with you? Is it a boy or a girl?
It's a boy. Yeah.
It's a boy. Okay. So you're going to take him with you to see what you're doing and everything?
Yeah. So absolutely. So for me, I think it's like the daily actions is the way I've been thinking about it. Same as you've been talking to people, and it's like, I think it's about those daily actions, and then also realizing that, even if in the home there is, we don't necessarily need to clean. You can get a cleaner. It's like, well, I want you to, you're packing the dishes. You clean up after yourself. There's all the little things, I think, that build up over time. And for me, I'm not precious that, hey, you become a business person, but it's like whatever you do, it needs to ignite your fire. And I think the word you just said, the self-actualization is probably the most important, is realizing, there's the reason that people can win the lottery and then 2 years later lose it and go, what happened? Compared to someone who creates a business, is because during the creation of the business, you are changing as a human, and that is I would actually argue more important than the money at the other end, because that you can never lose. Exactly. You make a different person. You make a resilient person that you help them climb. It's a struggle, right? And I don't see enough podcasts about that. That's one podcast that would be amazing, where we can go and start seeing case studies on families. I would always recommend put the kids in an environment of other kids that are already doing that. This way your job is going to be a lot easier. So if you find that you have some friends that their kids are around the same age and their kids are always with them and they're helping them, then tell them, listen, man, I'm going to put my kids with your kids, and I want them to see. I want them to get an example, not from me saying it. I want them to see it, because we're basically going to do the same. That's just... So that is a recommendation. Just make sure they're with the right kids. And again, like you said, it doesn't have to be an entrepreneur. If they weren't wired for that, that's okay. You can do whatever it is. If you're going to the corporate world, succeed over there. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, succeed over there. Like, just do it. Do it from a place of passion. I love it. Yosef, that was incredible. Thank you very much for your time.
No problem. Thank you for having me.